Alright everyone, we start off today with the epic New Year's Eve trolling of Kamala Harris. Of course, there's a lot of hypocrisy to talk about here and some goofiness from the legacy media. It's like a little miniaturized nexus of basically all the political corruption and stupidity that we've seen over the last couple of years. Gregabbott got about 140 illegal immigrants. They call them migrants now to be PC, but most of them are not legit asylum seekers. They are illegally in the United States. It's just that the federal government refuses to refer the matter in that manner. Instead of deporting people, generally speaking, they're just brought to the interior of the country and they disappear. There is no attempt at the moment, by the way, by the Biden administration to address the border crisis. Biden has been reluctant to even address the issue, and when he's pressed to address and he's cornered, he says, I've got other priorities. It's not that important. There are bigger things to do, like going and giving a fluff piece interview on NBC, or going golfing, or biking around in Rehoboth Beach in Delaware. Those are important. He's got to get his bran muffin in and shit so he can have a fucking bowel movement so he's less full of shit in the afternoon. But Gregabbott packed up about 140 migrants, men, women, and children, think of the children, and shipped them on Christmas Eve to Washington, D.C., 3 busloads of people, where they were dismounted near Kamala Harris's home. Now, Kamala's border czar. She's made it clear she's not interested in bothering to visit the border. She's not interested in talking about the border. Somehow she maintains that semi-official position, appointed by Joe Biden, to basically be the whipping girl of the administration when you think about it. I mean, Biden is the one that's the chief executive, but he appoints Kamala there into that ignominious position, knowing that he can't do anything to solve the border crisis even if he tries, because there's no wherewithal within his party to fund any attempt to do so even if he wanted to. And so he passes the buck. Not a bad move. I think Jill Biden was actually the one that decided that. We've got kind of a Woodrow Wilson post-stroke presidency already when you think about it. Now, here's the hypocrisy. You have these individuals like Kamala Harris. They're always talking about giving us your huddled masses as though it was the mid-1800s and we can still do a Homestead Act thing with free land because we've got so much land here that's so little settled. Well, we don't have that advantage anymore. This is why the United States outperformed for the last couple hundred years, because until recently we still had relatively large, vast areas of land that were barely settled but had resources. Whereas the old world, it's harder for them to deal with things because they've already reached their comfort capacity and then some. Right now, you look here in the Netherlands, they're packing more and more people in despite virtually every square inch of the country already being developed, for example. Italy and Germany are losing population. England has a crisis. They can't even provide enough houses, but they don't have any fallow land really to develop without felling the last few copses that actually exist there. But by locating people up in the mountains, they're going to have to start plowing into the earth and putting housing beneath ground just to save room because they would like to live like a bunch of goddamn drone lemmings. Gregabbott sends the migrants there. The same politicians who are saying, let them all come into the country. These are little kids. These are asylum seekers and stuff. You know, we need more sex slaves, basically, is their MO. Then all of a sudden they get very, very mad when they're put in Martha's Vineyard or New York City, where they've declared a de facto state of emergency because our homeless encampments are overrun. We don't have the resources. We thought that these people would stay down there. We thought they would stay to home where they belong. Not in Martha's Vineyard, not in poor little us Chicago, not in sanctuary states and cities, by the way. They never expected that there would be an attempt to actually give them the migrants that they swear up and down they welcome into the country. They want them in the country, but they want them in Texas or Florida or Southern California. They don't want them in their communities. They're not willing to open their arms. On the off chance that you have a welcoming of any reasonable number of migrants in the United States, it's usually sponsored by the local government or by a state government, number one, usually against the wishes of the core of the population. And then the vocal minority shows up to say, well, we welcome you. They're not the ones that are inviting them into their houses, generally speaking. No, they end up in the now derelict, unemployed and homeless overrun hotel that was converted during lockdowns or something like that into a de facto homeless shelter. That's where they belong, according to people like Kamala Harris. This is, by the way, Christian charity or something like that. That's what they claim. Next, you see the stupidity of the legacy media articles. Link in the description, archived, of course, just one of them. Have you noticed that virtually all coverage of this story involves something along the lines of, well, on one of the coldest nights of the year, on the sanctified Christmas Eve, no less, all these poor women and children were offloaded. They were freezing. It was cold. Now, let me ask you this. When's the last time the legacy media complained about the number of homeless U.S. veterans that have to sleep out in -10 weather? They don't have a support network that's capable of limitlessly taking care of them like the illegals do. The U.S. government, state governments, city governments have freed up untold resources to deal with the fact that the U.S. southern border is completely Swiss cheese at this point and no longer even resembles a functioning border. Millions and millions of people, therefore, are able to be compensated for, but not if they were born in the United States. Oh, it's the schizophrenic dude who lives under the bridge? Fuck him. Oh, it's the PTSD veteran who served his country bravely, but, he can't find a job. He's all messed up. Fuck him. Nobody cares about them. Unless they happen to be LGBTQ or something, in which case there's a support network for them too. Other than that, there's nothing. These people are being abandoned by their own government. Millions of them. Literally millions of people. But there's plenty of room for people who don't even legally belong in the United States. The legacy media paints this dark, horrendous picture of these poor freezing migrants that are shuddering against the cold, Christmas star overhead, and they glance over, and they see the nativity scene, reminding them of Feliz Navidad, of course, invariably, and they cry the tears that turn to ice, for they are so far from home. That evil Gregabbott forced them onto those buses to be relocated. No, asshole, it's called they're voluntarily going wherever the buses are going. Originally slated for New York City. I guess they decided that the cold there was a little bit too atrocious for even them. Washington, D.C. They send them there, to the capital of the country. You'd think that you could have, because Washington, D.C. basically has a debt-based budget and can do whatever it wants with full autonomy, you'd think they could put up a couple of shelters for the migrants now, wouldn't you? Why don't we just use all the spare bedrooms in the rich bitch parts of the city where people like Kamala live, where they have 7, 8, 9, 10 bedrooms and they're sporadically inhabited? Why don't we use their homes? Instead of having a policy that takes money from the lower and middle classes via inflation to pay for people that aren't even legally entitled to be in the country, why don't we force the rich bitch NIMBYs to do it? Why don't you show some charity instead of volunteering other people's money to take care of people that don't even belong in the country according to existing established U.S. law? If they want to come to the United States as asylum seekers, that's perfectly fine. Refugees are welcome, but usually they're not. You can't legitimately claim that someone, just because their home country is impoverished, is due a boat ride or a plane ticket and then can wander into the country and stay limitlessly. We don't do that for Ethiopia. We don't do that. Yes, refugees are lifted out of war zones, Darfur and stuff, on a limited basis, but we don't say, look, if your country is less fortunate than ours, you can just come right on in. Who gives a damn? We've got plenty of room. Yeah, okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. Let's become more like Western Europe and clutter ourselves full so that there's no longer any room to roam. By the way, this won't harm the environment, gobbling up all that fallow land that could be forests and mountains and shit. We'll level the mountains and we'll build more suburbs or something. We'll build medium density. We'll make like little Euro cities all over the United States. There are plenty of Americans that are suffering right now in the cold. What will you tell little Jimmy's family who had to turn the thermostat down and turn it off entirely so they have 5 fucking quilts on there all huddled together in a dark room because the power's out due to the massive freeze? When the legacy media comes out and all of them have front page news saying, well, these poor other people here are being mistreated, who voluntarily came to the U.S. and then voluntarily got on these buses knowing that it was going to a northern climb during this freeze. They do have smartphones, everyone. Just to be clear, just because someone's from Nicaragua or Haiti does not mean that they don't understand how to use technology. They were fully aware of the temperature outside. It was cold down in Texas already anyway. Voluntarily did so. They get sympathy. they get front page news. Homeless veteran, little Jimmy's impoverished family, the old widow, 80 years old, who has to choose between her insulin and, getting cat food. Fuck these people. Nobody cares about them. So good on Gregabbott. Hopefully next time it's a lot more than 140 people. All of D.C. should be overrun. It shouldn't just be Texas. Florida and Arizona and these other states need to step up, and they need to dogpile these liberal areas to show them finally how big the problem really is. That's about all. Peace out.